from Quito, Ecuador. I'm Soini Gray and this is From the South, the daily news brief from Telstra English. We start this new edition right now. Everything is ready for Sunday's regional elections in Venezuela. Reporting restrictions came into effect at midnight, which means no media can report on the parties or their campaigns until the polls close. This will be the 22nd set of elections since the Bolivarian Revolution began 19 years ago. It comes on the heels of July's election of a National Constituent Assembly, which put an end to months of violent opposition protests. All the main opposition parties are standing candidates on Sunday. Our correspondent in Caracas, Regan Devines, joins us live now.
Hi, Soini. Good to see you. We are right now in the Casa Amarillo here in Caracas, Venezuela. We're just behind me. I don't know if you can see. I'm poor with a Skype phone. Just behind me, over 70 electoral experts from across Latin America, across the United States, and across Europe are all here to meet with the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Delcy Rodriguez, among other officials. And they'll be discussing what is to come on Sunday for the regional elections, which will choose 23 governors across the state. Now, this is a big deal here in Venezuela. There's a lot happening. Infrastructure is being put in place. Rules are being checked and rechecked. And one source of contention here is that there was an issue with the voting centers. Venezuela's opposition has been saying that they are uncomfortable with how the voting centers have been relocated to other areas. Now, the government has said time and time again that they had changed 274 voting centers. 204 of those centers were relocated for two reasons. One reason was the fact that they were vandalized during those 4 months of opposition protests, as well as for the National Constituent Assembly elections on July 31st. Another reason was because some of those voting centers were private institutions, private schools that had refused to offer their services for the to allow voting because they do not side with the government. 70 of those 274 voting centers, which have been relocated, were relocated because of infrastructural issues. And so the government has been trying really hard to get everything working and in operation so that at least 48 hours before voting starts at 6 a.m. on Sunday, that everything is in place and no voter would be confused as to where they would need to go and what their voting procedures are. And of course, they had placed signs and notices at the old voting centers to give directions as to where the new voting centers are. Now, as I said, a lot of preparation has gone to this Ministry of Justice. Has said that 143,000 security officials will be deployed for Sunday's regional elections, plus thousands more military and police officials will be deployed as well to ensure that there is safety and security of not just voters, but of the voting centers. Security is a big issue and concern for the government for this upcoming elections. President Nicolas Maduro he's never been so adamant that he wants everything to be done peacefully without any violence whatsoever. And we have been seeing messages on social media from some opposition members, not all, that violence may be coming for this regional elections. For one example, all governors that win their states must be sworn in before the National Constituent Assembly. The team of members that make up this National Constituent Assembly that is there to ensure peace. However, members of the opposition have said that they will not honor this process. They will not go before the National Constituent Assembly to be recognized in front of this group of people because they have never agreed and they have never supported the electorate that made up the National Constituent Assembly. Just to give you an idea of what has been happening around the country in preparations of these elections, we have a report from Tachira State right now.
In 2014, this avenue in San Cristobal, the capital city of Tachira State, was the epicenter of the opposition violence, where once a banner calling for a coup stood. Today, that banner has been replaced by a new one, which invites people to vote for the regional elections, rewriting the history of death and violence. This story of terrorism was repeated only 3 months ago, and the political parties who supported the violent protests are now participating in democracy, although they still insist that there is a dictatorship in Venezuela.
For there to be a peace after a dictatorship, there must be elections.
In a dictatorship, there are never any elections. There is nothing. But here in Venezuela, there's a lot of freedom of speech and expression.
Two main electoral options are available in Tachira. The first is a coalition candidate from a traditional opposition party, the Democratic Action, and the other is the Justice First Party, which is one of the political groups that led the violent protests and has called for international sanctions. The current governor of the state, José Vielma Mora, is part of the Justice First Party.
We want everything done peacefully. We don't want any violence here, and we don't want anyone to invade us here.
Here we continue to struggle against an empire. This is not an easy task, to fight and to battle against an empire from the poor areas. This is not a simple election. Looking beyond the passion of voting, this is a vote for the revolution. This is a vote to keep the revolution alive.
The revolution has to compromise in order to keep the peace. The opposition violence has left lasting scars, and here there are still some traces of how this free university was set on fire and damaged. It remains as a lasting symbol of the roughly 200 Venezuelans murdered in the streets during opposition protests from 2014 to 2017. A victory for the opposition will give them hope that they will be able to put an end to the revolution and the government of Nicolas Maduro.
The Vice President of Colombia has traveled to the south of the country to meet the relatives of the campesinos affected by the Tumaco massacre on October 5th. The official number of those killed in the massacre has risen to 7, although local communities still believe there may be more victims. Oscar Naranjo heard angry protests from the community who want the security forces to leave the area. They say the government has not been respecting the terms of Colombia's peace process with its forced eradication of illicit crops. Trade unionists in Colombia are holding a week of protests over the government's economic and labor policies. Our correspondent, Milton Hinoa, has been at one of the demonstrations in Bogota and sent this report.
Demonstrations continue here in Bogota. Today we see that the unions are marching. Specifically, I'm here next to this group of customs officers and workers from the tax department, which are the bodies in charge of tax collection in the country. They're demanding 3 things. The first one is a raise of their salary. Secondly, the formalization of their contracts, because unfortunately right now they do not have a legal guarantee or their employment rights. And thirdly, they are asking for the tools that they need to fight corruption and cases like the Panama Papers. They say without these tools that they can't do their work properly. This is the demonstration that we can see here in Bogota, with tens of thousands of public workers in the streets.
Thank you so much, Milton Hinau. Drug trafficking and the cultivation of coca are the greatest threats to the peace process between the Colombian government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, according to the country's High Commissioner for Peace. The government of President Juan Manuel Santos and the FARC rebels signed a peace accord last year to end their roles in a conflict that has killed at least 220,000 people. The Peace Commissioner, Rodrigo Rivera, explained the complex situation.
I believe that drug trafficking and illicit crops are the most important threat. Whilst this exists, it will be the honey that attracts the bears. They are hanging around and creating a new dynamic organization in areas abandoned by the FARC. This creates risks for the former rebel members being reincorporated, for the security of the communities, and the risk of attracting people to get involved again.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Three weeks after Hurricane Irma, Puerto Rican leaders are warning of the precarious health conditions and the lack of basic services. Health officials say that the service that they are giving is getting worse by the day because of the lack of supplies and medical equipment. They also fear the lack of drinking water, food, and electricity could aggravate the situation even more. President Trump has threatened on Twitter to withdraw U.S. emergency staff and blame Puerto Ricans for the island's financial crisis. Now let's go to Dominica, where we track the recovery of the island after it was hit by Hurricane Maria. Almost 4 weeks after the hurricane, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit announced through his Twitter account that all services have been restored at the Roseau Ferry Terminal, including departure tax, security, immigration, and customs. More than 30 people died in the Caribbean island as a result of Hurricane Maria. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has met Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto in Mexico City as negotiations over the North American Free Trade Agreement continue. The Canadian leader insisted that the country will not abandon the NAFTA talks, while Peña Nieto said Mexico would keep working with Canada and the United States to reach a deal that has been beneficial to all three countries.
We continue to believe that improving upon and modernizing NAFTA is the best way to create opportunities for our citizens, for our workers, for our businesses, to grow the economy and to help people in all three of our countries. That is why we remain committed to the NAFTA process, because we know that it has created millions of jobs.
Bien atento a lo que esté ocurriendo realmente en las mesas de negociación.
Be attentive to what is really happening at the negotiating table. Whatever statements are made or positions are expressed outside the negotiations is just speculation. Yesterday, I believe President Trump mentioned creative reforms to find a solution to this negotiation process. I believe that Mexico and Canada share the view that the NAFTA agreement is a good mechanism. It is not the only one, but it is a good mechanism to strengthen the development of the North American region, to make it one of the most competitive and productive in the world.
Our correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Perez, has more on Trudeau's visit and the NAFTA negotiations.
So it is the second day of Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's official visit to Mexico. And after a much criticized photo op packaging aid kits for the September earthquakes victims in the Mexican Red Cross installations, he and President Peña Nieto proceeded to deliver official messages. Both of them were not considered bland by the analysts, saying that both Mexico and Canada are going to present a common front towards the bullying from North United States President Donald Trump, which seems a little counteractive because Justin Trudeau just a couple of days ago was meeting with Donald Trump saying that if Mexico was the problem with NAFTA, Canada and the United States can go on with their commercial relationship. So Trudeau is trying to keep his agenda taking care of Canada's commercial interests. he has had a lot of problem with the Bombardier issue with the United States, and he doesn't want to lose his place as the third commercial associate with Mexico either. So he is trying to smooth relationship, but let's not forget that the renegotiation of the North America Free Trade Agreement is being done on the table by specialists that are only taking one chapter at a time. And pundits say that whatever is happening with the declaration of the presidents and the prime minister is not really reflected on the advance of the renegotiations on Washington, D.C. This is the news. Let's go back with you.
Thank you, Pablo Perez, for that report. A genocide trial is restarting in Guatemala against the former military leader, Efrain Rios Montt. Rios Montt was found guilty in 2013 of genocide, but a series of legal maneuvers forced the sentence to be suspended. The judge ordered the entire trial process to begin again. The former dictator led a counterinsurgency war in the 1980s, which killed some 200,000 people, most of them indigenous civilians. One Cinca indigenous community in Guatemala has been reduced to rubble by a nearby mine. We have this report.
Hola, ¿qué tal, compañeros? Bueno, acá en la ciudad capital de Guatemala se reanuda el juicio por genocidio en contra del general José Efraín Ríos Montt.
Here in Guatemala City, the genocide trial against General José Efraín Ríos Montt is restarting. However, this trial is not public and it's taking place without the presence of former leader because he was declared by local justice and forensic authorities as a person who's mentally incapable of facing a legal process. We should remember that the Constitutional Court annulled the genocide sentence against him, which was given in 2013. Since then, there has been a lot of back and forth of legal measures, and today this trial is restarting. He's being accused of crimes against humanity for the deaths of Mayan exiles in the year of 1982 in the north of Guatemala. The sentence was annulled, but the trial is being resumed, and we'll see what happens if a new sentence is reached to confirm he is guilty of genocide or if the issue is still be avoided through different legal measures from the Guatemala justice system. Back to the studio.
Dándole vueltas en ir y venir de recursos por parte de la defensa en la justicia guatemalteca. Volvemos con ustedes allá al set central.
And let's take you back to that report on the Xinca indigenous community in Guatemala.
This is a town called the Ghost Community. Officially, its name is La Cuchilla, but it was reduced to rubble after operations began at the San Rafael mine just outside the community.
Well, previously this was a beautiful town with all of the comforts you can imagine. Unfortunately, the mining company came and turned it into a ghost town because they destroyed all of the houses.
Until 2004, more than 90 families lived here in La Cuchilla. Now there are only 16, who say they suffer exclusion, even from the Christian faith.
The priest, as you can see, had the images removed and padlocks put on so that the people who live here can't get in. It's a way of pressing people to sell their land.
What happened in the community of La Cuchilla, according to the people taking part in the local territorial assembly, is an example of what they call savage capitalism.
As we have said before, because of the blood of families in these rural communities, they are making money and don't care what they destroy.
In the municipality of Casilla, Santa Rosa, peaceful resistance continue against the San Rafael mine. Those affected are some of those most active in the social and popular assembly.
These are communities in resistance. These people who are really suffering the reality of this country and all its effects. They are saying no to mining, no to hydroelectric plants, no to agribusiness.
The Social and Popular Assembly is holding consultative meetings in all parts of Guatemala, examining the structural and historical problems that harm the communities.
Santiago Botón, Telesur, Guatemala.
Thousands of representatives of Argentina's indigenous communities gathered in Buenos Aires on Thursday to demand the extension of a law preventing native communities from losing their land. During the rally, demonstrators called for the return of the missing political activist Santiago Maldonado and the resignation of the Argentine Minister of Security Patricia Bullrich. They chained themselves to the outside of the National Congress and spoke in favor of the Indigenous Land Emergency Law, which is due to expire in November.
We as native peoples say that he is a brother who was allied to our cause, and that was the reason why he went missing. The underlying motive of territorial conflicts, as in the case that led to the disappearance of Santiago Maldonado, are the natural resources that are in our territories. As for brother Santiago Maldonado, although he was not indigenous himself, he was one of us. That's why we call him brother.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Russia, Germany, France, and Britain have all reacted against the decision by the US President Donald Trump to decertify the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement. The president spoke on the Iran deal, which was signed by former President Barack Obama. The original deal lifted sanctions on Iran in exchange for limits on its nuclear program. Trump's refusal to certify the deal comes in the face of widespread global support for the agreement. International observers say Iran has been in total compliance with the deal.
Our policy is based on a clear-eyed assessment of the Iranian dictatorship, its sponsorship of terrorism, and its continuing aggression in the Middle East and all around the world.
Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, has more on the deal. Okay, so we're going to get that report in a bit. But residents in Palestine's Ramdallah region have expressed hope and caution over the unity agreement between Fatah and Hamas. On Thursday, the two rival parties agreed to hand over complete administrative control of Gaza to a unity government by the 1st of December. The decision comes after reconciliation talks were held between Hamas and Fatah in Cairo. And although the decision to end over 10 years of division is promising, many are asking if the reconciliation deal will last.
When you see something great, you say, yeah, it's great, I hope it will last forever. And then you, as a moment of silence, you think about it, what if it did not last forever?
The whole world has been demanding that Palestinians get unified. Now we are getting unified. It is now the duty of the whole world, the United States, Europe, the United Nations, and all nations of the world, to immediately support the Palestinian unity. Anybody who wants to see peace and stability in this region should support Palestinian unity efforts.
And while many are skeptical over the agreement, the choice to end more than 10 years of division is an important step in solving many of the issues in the Gaza Strip. Our Noor Harazin has more in this report.
Today is a very significant and happy day for the Palestinian people, as yesterday, Thursday, Palestinian factions declared the ending of 10 years of Palestinian division between the two rival parties, Fatah and Hamas. Yesterday in Cairo and in a recorded conference, Azzam al-Ahmad heading the Fatah delegation in Cairo and also Salah al-Arouri heading the Hamas delegation in Cairo have finally signed a reconciliation agreement to set everything up for the Palestinian people. Palestinian people here, especially in the Gaza Strip, as it was the most affected part in this division, they are happy and excited. People do hope that in the next few weeks many things things will be fixed in Gaza, especially the problems of electricity, the lack of fuel, medicine, the humanitarian crisis, and also all the problems regarding the employees and also the crossings like Rafah border.
Thank you so much for that, No. We go now to our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, because he has more on the cancellation of the Iran nuclear deal.
At this very moment, what we are hearing are reactions of was announcement of Mr. Trump regarding his decertification of the Iran nuclear deal and also imposing sanctions to the National Guard in Iran. We have heard from Trita Parsi from the National Irani Council here in Washington saying that rather than to create a safer world, his decision is creating a much more dangerous world because the prospects of a nuclear war are closer. Inside the Trump administration, even before this announcement, the recommendations of both of Trump's members of the cabinet, we're talking about the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, and the Secretary of Defense, saying that they do not believe that Iran is not respecting and is not dealing with the accomplishments that they were supposed to expect from there. Quite the contrary, he was absolutely following the different paths of the deal. So therefore, inside his administration, he was swimming against the tide. Also now he sent his new strategy to the Congress that has 60 days, what he calls, to find the flaws and correct the flaws according to his words, and to try to come with a new proposal. And there is a very skeptical Congress, because they do believe that even though probably the deal is not perfect, it's far from being the worst, and that the U.S. also, Congress is saying they have enough crisis in their hands, for example, with North Korea, to create a new point of attention or a new point of tensions. In general, it has been perceived as a very negative announcement and creating more and more question marks about the fitness of President Trump to be the president of the country, the leader of the country. It has been questioned more and more. One of his closest advisors, just as of a couple of months ago, that we're talking, Stephen Bannon, was his strategy chief in the White House. Now he has said during an interview with the magazine Vanity Fair that he gives him only 30% of chances that Donald Trump will finish his term, and against about 60% of the American population believes that he's not doing a good job. So this is adding a new element of creating basically rejection to his policies. And also another thing that is being clearly pointed is his determination to dismantle everything that has been President Barack Obama legacy. We're talking Cuba, we're talking Iran deal, and we're talking Obamacare. The three things openly and in a way deliberately being attacked in order to erase the Obama, basically the Obama era, and many people question if it's not also a sign of discrimination, because when President Obama was the head of state, he meaning Trump, was launching a ferocious campaign trying to say that President Obama was not born in the U.S. So it seems that it's almost like a personal thing, and that could be, not only that was part of his promises in the campaign, but also it seems there is something personal against the legacy of Barack Obama.
Thank you so much for that report, Mr. Gestoso. We just want to apologize for the loss of video on that, but we want to thank Mr. Gestoso for providing some much needed clarity on the new U.S. position on the Iran nuclear deal. That we have come to the end of our newscast. For more information on stories like this that you've just heard and others, turn to our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you so much for watching.